The day I came home from my work trip was supposed to be a happy one. I had spent 10 exhausting days traveling for a corporate project in Chicago, and all I wanted was to walk through my front door, take a hot shower, and sleep in my own bed. Instead, I pulled into my driveway and found my entire world turned upside down. Before I tell you what happened next, I want to ask you something. What country are you watching from today? Drop it in the comments below. And if you enjoy dramatic revenge stories where justice actually wins in the end, make sure to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. Now back to that day. The first thing that felt wrong was seeing my suitcases and a few storage boxes sitting on my porch. At first, I thought maybe my sister Melissa was reorganizing the garage. She had been staying at my house while I was away, helping take care of things. At least, that's what I believed. But as I got closer, my stomach dropped. Taped to the front door was a single sheet of paper. My hands were shaking as I pulled it off and read it. "You don't live here anymore. I've decided to take over the house. Don't try to come inside. I've already changed the locks." I read the note 3 times because my brain refused to process what I was seeing. This wasn't a joke. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was my house. My name was on every document. I paid every bill. I bought that house 5 years earlier after working endless overtime and sacrificing weekends just to save enough for a down payment. And somehow, my own sister thought she could throw me out. I knocked on the door. No answer. I knocked again, harder this time. A few seconds later, the curtain moved. I saw Melissa looking at me. Then she smiled. Not a friendly smile, not an apologetic smile. It was the smile of someone who thought they had already won. And when she slowly closed the curtain and walked away without saying a single word, I realized something that made my blood run cold. My sister hadn't lost her mind. She had planned this. And what I discovered over the next 24 hours was even worse than the note on my door. I spent that night in a cheap hotel less than 10 minutes from my house, but sleep never came. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that note taped to my front door. Melissa and I weren't strangers. She was my younger sister. Growing up, I had protected her from bullies, helped her through college, and even loaned her money when she couldn't pay rent. When she called me 3 months earlier saying she needed a place to stay. After a breakup, I didn't hesitate. I gave her a key. I trusted her. And now I was locked out of my own home. The next morning, I called her, straight to voicemail. I texted her, no response. By noon, I decided to drive back to the house. What I saw nearly made me crash my car. Melissa had changed more than the locks. There was a moving truck parked outside. Strangers were carrying my furniture out of the house. My dining table, my television, even the antique bookshelf that had belonged to our late father. I jumped out of my car and ran toward the driveway. "What are you doing?" I shouted. One of the movers looked confused. "We were hired to move this stuff." "Hired by who?" Before he could answer, Melissa stepped out onto the porch. She looked completely calm, almost proud. "You're trespassing," she said. I stared at her in disbelief. "Melissa, this is my house?" She crossed her arms. "Not for much longer." Those words hit me like a punch. Then she said something that explained everything. Apparently, while I was away, she had been telling relatives and neighbors that I was planning to sell the property and move overseas. She claimed I had agreed to let her take over the house. Most people didn't know what to believe, but Melissa wasn't relying on family gossip alone. She had been preparing something much bigger, something involving forged paperwork and lies I couldn't even imagine. That's when I stopped arguing. I stopped yelling. I stopped trying to reason with her. Because standing there, watching her smirk from the porch, I realized something important. Melissa thought I was powerless. She thought I would panic. She thought I would fight emotionally and make mistakes. Instead, I quietly got back into my car, and for the first time since finding that note, I smiled, because I had just remembered one detail she had completely forgotten. A detail that was about to destroy everything she had planned. The detail Melissa forgot was simple. She could change locks. She could spread lies. She could even convince a few people to believe her story. But she couldn't change legal ownership. And she definitely couldn't erase records. The moment I got back to my hotel, I called my attorney. By that evening, I had sent him every document connected to the house. The deed, mortgage records, tax statements, utility bills, everything. The next morning, he called me back. "Emily," he said, "this is worse than I thought." My stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" He took a deep breath. "Your sister didn't just lie. She forged documents." For a few seconds, I couldn't speak. Apparently, Melissa had created fake paperwork claiming I had transferred ownership rights to her. The signatures looked convincing at first glance, but there was one huge problem. I had been hundreds of miles away on a business trip on the dates those documents were supposedly signed. My company records, hotel check-ins, flight information, and security logs proved it. Melissa had built her entire plan on a lie that could be verified in minutes. But things got even worse for her. A few days later, my attorney discovered that she had attempted to use those forged documents during conversations with a real estate agent. The moment I heard that, everything clicked. She wasn't trying to live in my house. She was trying to take it, maybe even sell it. I felt sick, not because I was scared anymore, but because this was my sister. Someone I had trusted. Someone I had loved. And she had been willing to steal the biggest investment of my life. That same week, my attorney filed the necessary legal actions. Meanwhile, I stayed completely silent. No social media posts, no public arguments, no angry phone calls. Nothing. Melissa mistook my silence for weakness. In fact, she became so confident that she started celebrating. Family members told me she was bragging about how she had finally won. She acted like the house already belonged to her. Then came the day she received an official notice. The smile disappeared from her face. The confidence vanished. And for the first time, she realized she wasn't dealing with an emotional sister anymore. She was dealing with evidence, documents, lawyers, and the truth. What happened next would leave her standing in my driveway, crying, while the people she had lied to watched everything fall apart. The day everything finally came crashing down for. Melissa started with a court hearing she seemed certain she would win. I remember walking into that room feeling calm for the first time in weeks. Melissa sat across from me, avoiding eye contact. The same woman who had smirked at me through my own living room window now looked nervous. Then the evidence was presented. The property records, the forged signatures, the travel records proving I wasn't even in the state when the documents were supposedly signed. One by one, every lie she had built her plan on collapsed. The judge wasn't impressed. Neither were the investigators. By the end of the hearing, it was clear that Melissa had no legal claim to my house whatsoever. The court ordered her to leave the property immediately. A few days later, I stood in my driveway as she carried boxes to a rental truck. Neighbors watched. Some relatives watched. The same people she had lied to for months were finally seeing the truth. For the first time, Melissa looked completely defeated. As she walked past me, she stopped. "I never thought you'd do this to me," she said quietly. I looked at her for a moment. Then I replied, "I didn't do this to you. You did it to yourself." She didn't have an answer. She simply turned around and walked away. And just like that, it was over. A few weeks later, my house felt like home again. The locks were changed. The legal issues were resolved. The stress was gone. Most importantly, I had learned a lesson. I would never forget. Being kind doesn't mean allowing people to take advantage of you. Sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't screaming, fighting, or getting even. Sometimes it's staying calm, letting the truth come out, and watching people face the consequences of their own actions. That was the day I got my home back. But more importantly, it was the day I got my peace back. How did you like this story? Let me know in the comments and tell me which country you're watching from.